Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this week's VIN-dow with Robert Hollenshead. Good afternoon to you, Bob, and I know we have a special guest today, Mr. John Clay Wolfe, coming at us out of somewhere in Texas.
Deep
Coming
in
out
the
of his
heart
ranch.
Texas. The
Yeah.
studio, man, the radio studio out in the bunker of the country.
It came a long way, pal. The place is looking good.
It's coming around. It's coming around. You inspired me with your garden. Everybody's got their gig that they've got to do to keep their brain sane, and this has turned out to be my project. Had that lake filled up in 8 hours. We had a flash flood, and it's completely full. I don't know if you've seen the picture, but I'll send you. I'm just shocked.
It's unbelievable, actually.
Yeah.
They say you got to get some bass or something and stick them in there, right?
Well, the problem with Bob and I is we know each other too well, so we'll just ramble, and we can speak each other's sidebars. You guys, Bob and I have been friends for 10 years. I cold called Bob 10 years ago to pitch him my radio show in conjunction with his product, Trade and Marketplace at the time. And you were right, starting to, you'd sold it, I believe, but you were still running it. And you told me, dude, I love the radio show. I've listened to you. You're good, but you're too edgy on the air, and Cox will never go for it. And you were right.
It's probably better that they didn't. You know what I mean?
It's probably better that they didn't. And Bob, we just got to talking, and we have so much in common. And he has been such a great mentor to me. And I hope you notice every time people call to tell me how great I am, I put your name in there because I don't think I'm great at all. But you've taught me so much. And if people will slow down and listen to you, they'll learn so much. And that's why I've been looking forward to doing this with you, because I'm a good example. I'm a walking example of one of your products is the reality, the way I look at it. Yeah, I had a lot going on. I've been at it for a long time. I'm no dummy. But you taught me how you changed my golf swing. Is that a good way to put it?
I guess so, Johnny. And I appreciate that because honestly, to me, I find it more rewarding than money when somebody has the ability to take advantage of whatever experience and I would call it theory that you've lived all your life. You follow me? So you actually, and I appreciate the fact that you acknowledge it here and there and whatever, because I've got a couple people that have actually taken advantage, I think, of what we like to help other people with. It's what I tell you about your kid now with football. You're living vicariously through the kid. Your success to me, I live vicariously through because, it was millions of torture sessions through time, arguing back and forth about different things and whatever. It's very rewarding to me to see, that you've come to the point that you did. And I was screaming at you different times when you started buying buildings and doing different things. In other words, in a wholesale business, we don't have 5 streams of income. We got one stream of income. It's what you're doing on an auction block. And what worried me is because I've seen it happen so many times in the past, guys that start building up in good time, right? Not thinking about when things are going left-handed. And, right now is a perfect example of that, where when things start to go a little weird with the market, it's you got to be prepared for that. And I think you've done a great job of getting prepared for that because you're not out running your headlights in terms of, your economic success. So there's a little bit of a padding there for these weird times.
Well, you always said 90-10, 90-10, 90-10. Keep 90% of what you're making. Spend 10% if you want to.
Yeah.
And if you can spend less than that, personally, do that. But 90-10, then you won't get caught off guard.
It's actually a fact, and it really does work that way. People say, other formulas. My feeling is close your eyes. You're not going to starve. Put the money in the bank where you never have to be somebody's slave. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You don't need somebody over your shoulder because especially when the shit's in the fan and somebody's hollering at you and they have control over you, your brain goes into I would call it a paralysis. Would you agree to that, John? You've been in a couple situations in your life where the shit was deep in the fan, and you're looking down the barrel. Your brain don't work the same. Maybe yours
No.
does because you're smarter than I am, but it just, you wind up with a thing where you're making really terrible decisions and tragic decisions because you're not able to use your wits. Your wits have been
Well, that was
clipped
what was
off.
lucky about my situation. I mean, what he's talking about is going broke. And if you haven't gone broke, and everybody's version of broke is different, but I went to my version of broke where I was down to a couple hundred G's, and I was paralyzed, and my wife left, and everything was on my ass. But I removed myself from the social pressure. I moved to Vernon, Texas, and I rebuilt in a small town where they didn't know anything about me except what they were seeing. All they knew was a crippled John, and
Right.
and that was fortunate because if you're trying to keep up with the Joneses and the country club memberships and the this party and the that, and you're going through that moment of broke, that's when those irrational decisions start coming up. You start doing stupid shit to hold face.
You're not adding buoyancy. You're actually putting on lead belts. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. And
It's very
if
true.
you are going to go broke, it's a lot more fun to do it over in a corner where nobody sees it. So, but that fear, and you put that in me it was already there, but hearing you, talk about it always helped me. Even if you've got cushion, you can't act like it. Even if you know you have cushion, when you
Right.
lose that edge, then um, that now edge, that we're going to go broke edge, we can go broke edge. Don't respect the checkbook edge. That's what is a recipe for disaster. And if anybody gets anything out of our conversation today, this would be a good one because we've both been through it. Mine was a little more severe than yours, I think. But yeah, we have some padding, but with the kind of dollars that Bob and I both throw around on a daily basis investing, it can turn on your ass quick. I mean, I'll never forget 9/11. I mean, I was in the wholesale business deep in 9/11, and the bitch just stopped. I mean, it just stopped.
Right.
There was no liquidity. Ford was the only one selling their cars at the factory sales. I remember there was 2 weeks there, and everybody was buying them for a third less or 40% less. The rest of the guys held them because they didn't know what to do. Thank God General Motors came out. Do you remember Keep America Rolling 0 for 60?
Yeah.
When they first did that, and that ignited the car market back up, and it brought us back to an oxygen level where we could breathe. But yeah, being broke is not fun. So
No, it really ain't, and it can go really bad, or you can actually like tighten things up and use the experience to your benefit. Actually, um, your story, John. I don't know if it's worthwhile telling because you probably told it many times, but not on Shoney's show. It's kind of interesting, that I think at one time you were the youngest Ford dealer in the country, weren't you?
I was the youngest Ford, GM, and Chrysler dealer. That wasn't a hand-me-down. Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
was when I was 28, I think. I was.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you a funny story. So I'm 28 years old. I put out 3 letters to 3 different manufacturers because I was doing a group buy of a small town dealerships, and so Ford accepted me, General Motors accepted me as dealer principal, Chrysler accepted me. I don't know if they would have accepted me if
Was
they
that
knew that I was.
shocking, John? Did that
That was
shock you
shocking.
that they
It
did?
was shocking, but what was
Right.
excited is I had floor plans now of Chrysler Credit, Ford Motor Credit, and GMAC. I don't know
Right.
if I've ever told you this story, Bob. So we're going along, and I've got these country stores, but I have my wholesale guys, and what that did was give us access to the factory sales. And back then, factory sales, you could
Oh,
make some money in
absolutely.
them. Sure.
Yep.
So we'd go in as Wolfe Chevrolet, Wolfe Dodge, Chrysler Jeep, Wolfe Ford, and I could hit them on those floor plans. So I had a big checkbook now, and General Motors, GMAC, officed in Plano, Texas. I got a call, I don't know, about 4 months in. Hey, we need you to come by the office, John. We want to meet with you. This is GMAC. Okay. So I drive over there. And I'll never forget, I called my father-in-law. He called me on my way over there. He said, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm heading over to GMAC. Why? He was a pretty good business guy. He was a good mentor also. And I told him, I said, I'm really not sure. And he said, this isn't good. I was like, what do you mean? He said, are you doing a lot of wholesale on their dime? I said, well, yeah. He said, they know about it. I said, well, they never mentioned it. He said, I bet that's what this is about. Long story short, get over there, sit in the big table. Mr. Wolfe Chevrolet has purchased more program cars in the past 5 months than it has in the past 40 years of previous owner existence. So the dealer I bought it from, we bought more program cars from GMAC sales in 4 months than they did, in 40 years.
Right. Yeah.
And they go through this math and that math, and it's way out of balance. And you're retailing this many off of your statement, but you're buying this many. Mr. Wolfe, are you a wholesaler? Why, yes, Mr. GMAC, I do a little wholesaling on the side. Yeah, we're not interested in you, and here's your termination letter. It was that bad. It was that quick. There was not a lot of discussion about it. So I had to go get someone to floor the new cars, and that's pretty scary. But it was the factory sales were great. You have factory sale experience. Didn't you used to go to the Chrysler sales?
Oh, from the beginning. Actually, my surrogate father, Al Bayless, was the original factory sale in the 60s. He actually created the first Chrysler sale in Hatfield, Pennsylvania. He owned the auction and got caught doing some weird things, and he had to sell the auction. So I learned just about everything you could learn from, not by under his wing, not like you and I talking when you're beginning, but just by watching Al, how he reconditioned cars, how speedometers were not the same after he was done with them, and actually how he was Mickey in the factories with bills and so forth. So as a little kid, I'm right out of the Marine Corps, 20-something, 21, 2 years old, right? And hanging around watching what's going on, learning an awful lot. In those days, there was no PDR, so we actually two-tone cars. You couldn't match silver charcoal paint on the PH&H cars, so you pinstriped and two-toned them instead. You follow me? So
PH&H, Peterson, Heather, and Hal. I was a PH&H dealer in Dallas.
Yeah. Same thing when we're dragging cars up and down prior to 95, up and down Route 1. Chains are letting loose and banging on roofs, and that's when we learn how to put vinyl tops on cars as opposed to trying to paint roofs. You follow me? Mm-hmm. So, Al actually wound up having a Renault AMC factory sale after he was done with the Hatfield Auto Auctions, now Philadelphia Manheim, I guess. So I learned a tremendous amount. If you give me some credit for mentoring you, I give Al all the credit for mentoring me, just in a different way. We did it in I would call it a friendship way. Al did it more or less in an animosity way, but I think you learn just as well, if not more. The tattoo sticks on a brain a little bit tighter. You know what I mean? And when we traveled together, we used to do the north-south routine. And this is before that was actually popular. You know what I mean? Dragging them up and taking them back down and all the rest of it, and learned a lot from it. When you get outside of your comfort zone, just hustling Philadelphia or something, you'll learn a lot when you watch how other people are actually operating their businesses in other parts of the country. That was a tremendous education that, it served me tremendously, and it opens your mind up, and it winds up taking you different pathways. You know what I mean?
You call them the tobacco states, the tobacco chewers.
Exactly.
In your experience in the Carolinas.
And
how you can't trust those damn Southerners because they'll slap you on the back and piss down your boot. You like the Yankee guys better. They'll tell you to F off, and you can trust that they're telling you to F off.
Well, it's a different set of rules and regulations. I actually learned that earlier in the Marine Corps. In other words, as a 15-year-old kid joining the service, you actually get mixed up with people that you otherwise didn't have any experience with, and there was a definite cultural difference between people, north of the border and south of the border, and I've always seen it doing business. In the wholesale business, in the auction business, there's I call it slower Delaware. You got to cross the bridge in Delaware, and it's slower Delaware. You might as well be in South Kakalaki. You follow me? And there's always been a cultural difference in how we do business. The way we do it today, after years of hand-to-hand combat, now it's all computer and simulcast and so forth. It's kind of like I would say homogenized a little bit more. And we have more direct contact with guys that we otherwise wouldn't have had. But the knowledge that you gain from moving outside your comfort zone, we did the same thing when we did things outside the country in Africa and China, different places before it was cool. You come back with a different level of experience, how things work. And I think it helped me go into an area that was way out of anybody's comfort zone, doing the first unseen bid by any car with computers. You know what I mean? And obviously, today that's like a normal thing. Everybody does it, but I think we were the pioneers with that shit, if I ain't mistaken. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I hear you. When we talk about zones a lot, and your zone, Northeast Corridor, the Sun Belt, the SEC, the tobacco chewers, as you call them, and then the Westies, which I've gotten a lot of experience in the past, 4 years with. And I'd call you when I'm out there in California looking at the beach and going over with you what I saw and this and that. And it's different. I mean, California's
it's a cultural different thing, brother. You know what I mean? I think you definitely have experienced it. There's no question about it. In other words, what you did change in Manheim, Dallas, moving over from the other auction, you've completely changed the dynamic of that. And the idea that it was going to matriculate out to the other side, I think I told you, because our experience goes back into the 80s out there. It's a different mindset. It's a different culture than it is where we are. You know what I mean?
They don't take risks on cars. They don't take risks.
Right.
We call them tennis shoe wholesalers in Texas, and Houston is full of them. But people that don't put a number and own it, they want to shop it, they want to sell it, they want to market it. Hey, I'm going to go show it to George. I'm going to show it to Bob.
Exactly.
And then
they
want to get
right.
commissions back. Yeah. And that's the difference. And then your stories up there on Jerome Avenue and in Teterboro, the airport, and where you got an edge, and I learned from you, is cash on the barrelhead, and let's pay now, and let's buy. If you're in a position to do it, you can money whip it. Is the bottom line.
Johnny, what you're saying,
go ahead,
is totally factual. It drives me, and it has always driven me out of my mind. When somebody asks, "Would you like to bid this car?" What's it take to write a check, man? Tell me too much. I'm going to tell you yes or no. You know what I mean? But please don't tell me you're going to bid the car. It's comical shit to me, man. It's actually very annoying. As soon as somebody says that shit, you turn my ears off, man. You know what I mean? You want a check? I'll give you a check. Tell me how much it is. If it's too much, I'm more than likely going to buy it. But please, let's not talk about it. I'll let you know.
But we ride the jagged line of what I call the bring money, right? What's it bring? Because if it's going to bring 20 grand, we need to own it for 19 after fees. We make a nick. And what I learned early in my career, I started at 18, and there was a wholesaler buying the trades out of the store I was in between college and high school. And he lived in the big house. And people were like, how did you get in the wholesale business? Well, I noticed this 25-year-old getting rich in the wholesale business, so it caught my attention. And it was that dumb, really. But we'd go to these bid sales, and we'd go to, be at the dealership, and there's 5 wholesalers lined up, and I'm calling around getting numbers, right? I'm calling Bob Chevrolet and John Ford, and they're 22 grand, and this guy's 22 grand. And then I watch the other wholesaler give 23. Well, how the hell did he give 23 if all I can get on it is 22? Well, he has more balls than I have, first of all.
And you got a different audience for it, Johnny. You know what I mean? That's really what happened when you were at Metro coming to Manheim. And I explained, with simulcast, you got a different audience. You can't predict what a good car is going to bring. It's physically impossible to sell it hand-to-hand combat and get real money for the ultimate car. You can't do it. When you actually put it in critical mass and put it in front of 400 or 500 people, nobody, Jesus Christ himself, cannot predict what it's going to bring. You follow me? That's really the edge, having a feel for a car and knowing that you're going to be able to put them together in a group and let things rip. You feel it as much as anybody with people whining that you sold a car too cheap.
That was my next comment. Here we go, the other side of that. Right. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, but what happens is guys don't understand because they're living in micro. We're living in macro. Micro is they got a car and they think it's going to bring X. But if it don't bring X and you got an audience of 387 people watching you, you can't sit there and tell them an if and a but and maybe I'll call my wife and my uncle's dead, but I'll call him anyway. He's got better advice. You got something, man. Because if you don't, it's the Jerry Springer effect, man. Anything can happen if you're paying attention. If you're not paying attention or you just have the thing turned on but you're not watching, you can't get participation, man. You know what I mean? And once you actually put a little, it's the piranha effect as well. Not just anything can happen, but when you put blood in the water, you're going to have people's attention.
Your own blood. That's what they don't understand. Your blood is in the water.
John, you couldn't say that more accurately. I was watching a Mercedes factory sale last week, and the auctioneers were like talking and singing and giggling and things. I said, these people ain't even serious about what they're doing. And the only way they could be allowed to happen is the seller ain't serious about selling cars because he got a job. It ain't his dough. If it was your dough and somebody was singing and giggling and carrying it on and next time, maybe next year, I mean, that can only happen if your skin ain't in the game, brother. When your skin's in the game, I don't care how much money you got, you need to sell it. You didn't bring people to a party to not have no candy and food when they get there, right? So it's the same thing with what you're doing on a Wednesday, or we've always done on a Friday, man. People got to know this shit is for real. This is not like giggly time. You follow me? It's on.
It's not an appraisal system.
And we're not trying to like get too much for something. We're going to get whatever the car brings with 400 people looking at it. If you think you can get more, God bless you. John, how many times do you no-sale a car and then actually get more money for it the following week? It's very rare.
It's rare. It does happen, and so that is an art that is a key thing that when you pick those few that you're going to miss, you need to really be right. Because you're showing your ass, you're showing your skirt. It's something that we preach that we're not going to do. And when we do it, and it does happen, it needs to be right. I mean, it happened a couple of times last week, but when we dump them 10 grand back, I mean, say we're a 40 grand MMR, and it's a good car, and we dump it 30 grand back, and 1, 2, 3, 4, nobody going to bid, next car. So take it away. And what? You can't do that. Well, I did do that. Y'all fucking get in the game and start bidding if you're here, because I'm here to play ball. If y'all don't want to play ball, let's not play ball. Let's go to the next one. And then I'll drag that car back after I wake them up and get it sold, because I hate missing a car. I hate missing a car. And it just drives me crazy. But you do have to manage the flow and the momentum of those lanes. And if you just sit there and it just slowly bogs down into absolute bullshit, then it's just
it turns into a factory lane where nobody cares if cars are getting sold or not. And I think once that vibe is coming across the screen, you might as well just fold up and quit, man. And you ain't never going to be actually in business to make a profit doing what we're doing. You know what I mean? The other thing is really weird. It's always happened, and I always love when it happened. When you talk about the line of wholesalers sitting at the used car manager's desk trying to buy cars, and you pay too much for that car at 23G. I love when you pay 23G and 3 or 4 of them wholesalers watching you sell that car and lose money with it.
Sure.
Oh, I love
then you're dangerous.
Because listen, the worst person in the world to get in a fist fight with is crazy, because anything can happen. You dig what I'm saying to you? And that actually is an ally of that circumstance, right? If it really is a store you're trying to protect and you're trying to help them make deals, and you really do step over the boundary of, well, you're not going to make any money on a car. We're here to do business. And occasionally you can actually find people on the other side of that. It's not always necessarily the case. Sometimes you do put the blood in the water and they ain't paying attention to your blood, right? But then that's your problem. That's your problem to decide when you're going to actually if it's worthwhile to continue to prove how stupid you are. You see what I'm saying?
How many dollars do you think we did it just a couple of days ago? New store, a Porsche store that also has a brother and sister that's BMW, Audi, Mercedes, right? This is what we call the good stops. So the owner needs $10,000 too much for his Porsche, blah, blah, blah. My buyer calls, and here's the thing. We got to kind of do this for this guy. What do you want to do, John? I said, it's already done. I mean, pay him $10,000. We're going to lose $10,000 on this car. I understand, but it's part of being a good partner with that dealership. And
we're helping them understand that this ain't a fugazi. You follow me?
Right.
It ain't a once and done. Like it ain't the deal. If we're going to help somebody do business, then we're going to help all the way. But it ain't going to be a one-way street. You ain't just laying down like a moron as roadkill. You know what I mean?
But we're not going in there to give $10,000 and be a chump either. And then the next week when we come back, we're treated like a
right. That's exactly correct. Yep. It's always been that way, and I'm afraid it's always going to be that way. And then you also, in today's world, in I don't want to sound like an old fart, but in the old days, managers actually were around for a long time. They didn't jump from job to job to job and change titles every 5 seconds. So you were actually building relationships with people. So people actually, then assume that somehow or other you got some sort of special thing where you're smearing people. We never really made that a practice because you only got to get caught one time. And I watched it many times where we snuck into stores after somebody got caught toting the note or giving the note, right? And it in the long run, it's a total disaster when you actually capitulate to the easy way of doing shit. You know what I mean? Plus, the guy that's a thief in a store ain't never going to be there long. You know
the
what I
whore
mean?
that's on the take is just like a man-woman relationship, and if she's cheating on you with her husband, she's got 3 others that she's doing the same thing with. It all blows up, and you're sitting there with you know what in hand.
You ain't the special one. That's
No,
exactly right.
no,
As bad
no.
as you want to be the special one, it ain't happening, Mo. You know what I mean?
Well, let's talk about today's market. So what is today? November 7th? Was that what?
10th or
2023?
something.
Yeah.
My wife's birthday is tomorrow. Marine Corps birthday is today, I think. Yeah, 10th.
So yesterday when I was selling on the block, you and I were texting back and forth. I said, this is an effing torture session. And you were watching the numbers, and you said it's not as bad as you think. I think it'll be better than last week, even though it doesn't feel like it. And you were exactly right. Was last week the bottom? I don't know what
No.
the bottom of what, you know.
Johnny, I don't think we're even close to anybody's bottom. We have the dumbest people in the history of the world running our country, so there's no confidence in the economy, right? We're going into all these other crazy things in the world. Not that there's a direct relationship to the psyche of what we do in the wholesale world, but to be perfectly frank with you, the prices were so overinflated for 3 years. I think there's a long way for them to come back to reality. You know what I mean? And I think, we got at least another, and listen, this is a exercise in futility, predicting shit, right? To me, it was encouraging. You had a little bounce yesterday, but I don't believe that's a universal thing to where, you got whatever you call it, a guideline to move from. I think we're going to keep on moving backwards, brother. The other thing is you got to picture this. Money costs money at this point, and cars ain't $10,000 no more. Your average car is what, 35 or 40 G. Ours is 35 or 40 G. Somebody's paying juice on that, and it's no longer nothing. It turns out to be something, right?
Right. Interesting.
And we had that conversation quickly this morning about the whole buyer's remorse thing and people wiggling. That wouldn't happen if interest rates are zero. You follow me? In other words, when people are playing vig on the money and they got a little bit of a fart on a car, it's something, who knows what, some microscopic shit. They're in a panic to get off of that car because 30 days later they're paying the juice. They're smushed in that unit. You know what I'm saying to you? So you've been around a little bit, Shawnee. You've moved around a little bit yourself. I say you never know anybody until you've traveled with them. So you could be best friends for life, and even go out to dinner and so forth, and you're best friends forever. You don't know nobody until you actually travel with them. Go on a 3-week trip someplace, right? And that's what happens in a bad market. You get revealed. In other words, people's attitudes get revealed. Your buyers get revealed. In other words, how they actually begin to operate under pressure. You know what I'm saying to you? Are they able to actually make the adjustment? Your windage and elevation it's got to be moved, or you're going to keep shooting at something. You ain't going to hit nothing because you ain't made the adjustment, man. You know what I mean?
When the adjustment happens, what happens? We have less cars, and it makes us uncomfortable because our egos and our drive and our overhead is set up around X amount of cars. And when the market adjusts, we got to pull back. It's uncomfortable as hell.
And it's painful because obviously if you are going to sell.
Because we're staffed. You and I both are staffed for big numbers.
And if you're not able to make the adjustment, you're going to keep on going down the same pathway of where you're sourcing and how you're sourcing, and thinking it's getting better just by osmosis. you're going to be in for a couple bad weeks, 3, 4, 8, 10, who knows how many weeks, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually where deeper pockets actually come into play. You're able to withstand the adjustment, hopefully helping your crew to make their adjustments. So, it don't do us any good if the people around us ain't doing good. It's better they're doing great, right? So hopefully, but most people don't pay attention because they already know more than you could ever tell them. Hopefully, they take a little bit of an examination and start flipping other rocks and or helping the pain go back to the source. Not to be a whiner, but just to let them know the market's not what it is supposed to be. And we can't look at historically what cars were worth because that ain't what's happening today and what's going to be tomorrow. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. It's interesting, and then everybody, your belly's sick, and the guys that you're competing with are flipped and they're upside down in their book, and that's when the market starts changing. Is when the spot money. Hey, we're good at this figure now, and we're still good at this figure on a lot of cars, and we drive that number down because that's all the guys are willing to pay. It's not that we set the market. The buyers in the lane set the market. Let's be real clear.
Right.
John, y'all set the market. You are the market. We ain't shit.
Right.
The buyers set the market.
It's the last bidder that set the market, brother.
Yeah. And to have the ball, but what you must drive through these bad times you can keep making money through them. You're going to make a lot less. But if you stop the wheel, your problems, your buybacks, your arbs, your bad buys.
Everything gets really ugly, man. The stink from your travel partners starts showing up, and you start arguing with people you never argued with before, or you start making dumb decisions, arguing with your customers. You follow me? Rather than picking the different fights, you start pissing people off that are your repetitive customers. You can't do
the ones
man.
that made you.
That's exactly correct. Yeah.
Right.
Well, we also make them, though, Johnny, because without the source of the cars, they ain't getting nowhere. They wouldn't keep coming back if we weren't providing a service that was valuable to them. That's an absolute fact. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And
when that guy comes to you, I did this, and I did that, and I did that, and I did this. The reason they do it is because they're there to make money. You supplied them a product that's making them money. They are your friends, and we do love them, but they're there for the money. Let's be real. It's like having a bar. They're there for the drinks and they're there for the girls.
Yeah, you're 100% right about that, pal. And if they get some entertainment out of it, also, it's not a bad thing. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Johnny, I really appreciate you taking your time today, brother. I'd like to make this a thing where we could visit on Shawnee's show on different topics rather than just talking about like nostalgic shit.
I got one for you real quick. I had written down before we go.
Yep.
Tell me why, you've told me before, but I think it'd be interesting for people to listen to. Why do previous Canadians perform better in the North than they do in the South? Because they do.
You see, that's also perceptual, John. I've never been, this particular run of the Canadian dollars, $1.35. That's happened a few times. That goes back into the 80s when we were bringing Blazers and Broncos across without titles. And the monetary thing obviously has a lot to do with that. And then we were sending cars to Canada for quite a long time when there was parity in the exchange. But to be perfectly honest with you, it's what I call Martian cars. In other words, these cars, in many cases, if a car is from Toronto, it's way south of New Hampshire or Massachusetts. So it's not a northern car. It's actually a southern car. You follow me? And when you look at Canadian road conditions compared to New York State or Western Connecticut, they're better in Canada. So it's not as if the cars are worse that are coming across. It's the perception. In the Northeast, there's enough importers that have been doing it for the past few years that they've created as very specific buyer base that don't seem to stray into other lanes. They're not straying into your lane or our lanes because we ain't doing it in volume. You see what I'm saying to you, John? In other words, you got to have critical mass. Like critical mass is something that I think we both understand pretty clearly. If you don't have groupings that are magnets strong enough to bring eyeballs to create, the best end user, right? It's not going to happen. If you're doing 10 or 20 or 50 cars a week, you ain't got the magnet that's going to drag people to you. You follow me? You got 2 announcements in the middle of the run. The guy that's sitting there looking at 12 other lanes, he ain't sitting there trying to do you a favor. It's not happening. It's about critical mass. There's dealers that have been successful selling them through the South. But there's an aura about a previous Canadian car as if these poor people are Martians or something. Shawnee, you ain't a Martian, are you? You're like a normal guy, ain't you?
No, but I can pick on a U.S. vehicle out in Canada and vice versa. Like anything, our bumpers are a little bigger up here. We got higher crash standards, so I can pick them out like going out of style.
Yeah.
So if you took 100 previous Canadians, new Fords, whatever, and we run them in Detroit and PA and Dallas, which
no, you're right about that. Detroit, without any questions, Detroit's bringing more money. There's no doubt about that.
So there's a mentality of comfort level with that product that has not matriculated down to the South.
But it's also when you live there, Johnny, you realize there's nothing wrong because it came across the Windsor Bridge that it turned into some sort of a piece of shit. You see what I'm saying? When you're in Detroit, you drive 5 minutes, you're in Canada. The car didn't change. You see what I'm saying? So you're used to that type of car in Minnesota or wherever.
I don't think it's the car. You're talking too much about the car, and I'm thinking more about the psychology of the dealer in the South that is not educated on the warranty and the bank funding on it. They're scared of it because all they see is an announcement, and they don't really know what the ramifications of that announcement are.
Right.
And
I guess if there was and you sold a Canadian car takeoff during COVID and so forth, because there was no other cars, so the alternative wasn't there. But now that the alternative definitely is there, the Canadian thing has, I would say, petered out as well. You follow me?
Well, what does it cost to buy, $50,000 new Ford truck? You bring it across. What's it cost to flip it into U.S. spec? The ODO and the conversion.
Yes, nothing. It's next to nothing. And there's people. They've turned it into like an industry where it's not even a problem to do it. It's no big deal. You know what I mean?
How long does it take? How long is the money?
Well, it's not how long it takes. There's also you got a 30-day wait period, John. Right now, wait period when you're talking about $100,000 truck, you got 10 of them. All of a sudden, it's $1 million you got laying for 30 days, and not that the $1 million ain't there. But now you're also assuming the market's going to be there 30 days from now. You see what I'm saying to you? We've had like over the decades, we've had experience with it, and my stomach just doesn't fit the 30-day wait or the 45-day wait, whatever it turns out to be. I don't know what it is. When I buy something, I'm going to sell it the next day. Period. End of the story. If it ain't the next day, it's got to be the following day. You know what I mean? I don't see shit getting better like wine with time. And that could be a psychological problem of my own. I just can't stand waiting when you buy something. You're going to have a problem with them cars that John Pierce bought you. Not selling us. You see what I'm saying to you?
That barn find?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'd have a terrible problem, and they need to be kept around because those cars need to be sold in a group that has more money than brains, and is never going to find a group of cars like that again. You see what I'm saying to you?
I've got to figure out what to do with those cars. I mean, they're not bothering me yet. I figured I was going to.
They're not bothering you yet, but they're going to bother you shortly. Just like a stone in the shoe don't bother you, but they're going to bother you soon because it chewed up all the space at a new barn. Now you ain't got no space to put other shit into. You ain't lying to me. You can lie to somebody else, pal. You understand? And when you walk past the same hog every day, whether you put the bumper on or you didn't put the bumper on, I want to see something different, Daddy-O. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Acting like you're going to be turned into a collector, in my estimation, don't fit the personality, pal. You know what I mean?
No, I hear you. But I have not convinced myself of what the proper venue for this is. Do I do them at Mannheim and convince them to do it on an off day and bring the public in? Do I do them at Barrett and pay their fees? Do I do it on? How do we do it? Do we do it outside?
That particular group, of course, Johnny, I think is special enough that you could negotiate a deal with one against the other and do an absolute. Because in other words, obviously, you can do an absolute. But they got to be exposed to the right buyer. It could be a Chinaman. It could be who knows what, right? But somebody that's going to spend money to buy things that you ain't going to replace. It's a Peruvian Waco from the 4th century is what that shit is. You ain't getting another one. You know what I mean?
Right. What he's talking about, guys, is we bought 25 cars from a hoarder, not a collector, a hoarder in Alabama, and they were new. New means new, like 71 Corvette, 40 miles, 77 Vet, 12 miles, wrapped in plastic. These cars are brand new, so they're time capsules, and they're desirable. The one thing you had to say about the guy we bought them from, God rest his soul, he did know how to order a car. He did know what he was doing.
But more importantly, John, so you could pick out one or two, the Z06, whatever it is, right? We bought and sold them cars new. Them cars were rocket shot hot when they were brand new. They blew up. I understand that. But having a brand new one of them cars, I personally think as a group, they're worth at least double what they'd be worth breaking out one or two or three of them cars and getting way too much money for them. You see what I'm saying to you? I think as a group, it becomes a little bit different than the fact that you got 2 or 3 or 10 that are spectacular. That's my personal point of view. And because of what they are, I think one of these goofball auctions, and I don't know that it would be, but listen, Johnny, we've done it at Manheim where we've sold cars that were really, truly like one-of-a-kind kind of cars.
I've seen you do it.
And sold them. And then they go on to bring a trailer or some other half-ass and lose. Absolutely. So I'm not saying they couldn't, but I have a funny feeling based on what that group is, they need to be like a headliner at a Barrett or something. You follow me?
But you got to take 8% right off the top, and then the shipping to wherever the
maybe you're pretty good at negotiating shit, Johnny, and it's going to bring a lot of eyeballs to their venue. You know what I mean? Right. They can only Carol Shelby so many things before that shit gets worn out. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying to you? This really is a one-off thing. It ain't a one-off, but he signed it and all that kind of bullshit. Hard bought them, never touched them, and now here they are. You know what I mean?
Right. And never to be bought again. I mean, you're just not going to find it.
It will not be duplicated. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. There ain't enough barns in the country where you're going to duplicate that shit. It ain't happening, Mo. Well, all right, Johnny, we wore everybody out. They already got to work if they're listening, and they're already sick of listening to us anyway. So we'll hold the breath for the next time, pal. I appreciate you coming on showing these things.
If you guys want to see these cars, go to the John Clay Wolfe Show on YouTube. We put up a video. This is Alabama Barn Find, and it tells the backstory on that. Bob, thanks.
See you, pal.
See you, Johnny. Thank you, Bob.
Have fun, brother.